Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we are diving straight into one of the most common tasks when it comes to virtual machines, building a basic web server in Microsoft Azure. So get ready to expand your knowledge and learn how to set up your very own web server to power your online presence. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the process of creating and configuring a web server using Azure's powerful infrastructure. Whether you are running a pizza store or jollof rice store, an e-commerce website, or curious about web hosting, this information will come in handy. Let's get started. Imagine you're part of a jollof rice store that is looking to take your business online. For those of you who are unfamiliar with jollof, this is a popular West African delicacy rice dish made with tomato sauce. To create an online presence for our store, we need to create a website where people can place orders for delivery and takeaway. That's where Azure comes in. We will explore the core component of infrastructure as a service, IaaS, and get hands-on experience with setting up a web server. Now, before we jump into the technical details, it is important to understand the options available. In Azure, you can choose between running a virtual machine, which falls under IaaS, infrastructure as a service, or you can also use platform as a service for your web applications. I will help you make informed decisions about when to use each approach. Infrastructure as a service is a cloud computing service model that provides basic computing resources such as virtual machines, storage, and networking over the internet. With IaaS, businesses can rent IT infrastructure resources on a pay-as-you-go basis without having to purchase and manage the hardware and software themselves. So why might you lean towards IaaS? Here are a few scenarios where it could be the right fit. If you want complete control over your infrastructure, IaaS is the way to go. You have the freedom to configure and manage virtual machines, networks, and storage according to your preference. Legacy applications. For applications that are not designed to run in a cloud-native environment, IaaS can be a better choice. You can lift and shift existing applications to the cloud without significant modifications. Here are some of the reasons to choose platform as a service. Ready-to-use environment. With platform as a service, you get a ready-to-use deployment environment. No need to worry about setting up servers, configuring databases, or managing operating systems. It's like having a digital canvas where you can directly paint your ideas. Faster development. Platform as a service accelerates development by offering pre-built components and services. You can focus on writing code and crafting features rather than dealing with infrastructure. So that means your business, you only focus on what helps your business grow rather than focusing on the underlying infrastructure. So it might be slowing down. So utilizing platform as a service, you can offset that to the provider, the cloud provider, and then you focus on your core business. So choosing between platform as a service and infrastructure as a service all depends on your project's specific needs. If you value control, customization, and the ability to manage every aspect of your infrastructure, infrastructure as a service might be the right choice for you. Alright, time to roll up your sleeves and get started. We are going to create a Ubuntu Linux virtual machine, which is a common choice for hosting web servers. Don't worry if you are more comfortable with Windows. We will cover that in another video, so stay tuned. Now, let us start by going to portal.azure.com. So once you're in portal.azure.com, you have the option to create your virtual machine by going into the virtual machine blade. But with that, you can use the search option at the very top here to search for virtual machine, and then you can select that option. But alternatively, you can also go to the menu option here and select the virtual machine. Also, you can also create a new resource and then select the virtual machine from there. So I'll use the third option here. So once you click on that, this will take you to the marketplace where you will see the popular services, which will include a virtual machine. And you can also use the search option here to create the virtual machine as well. So I'm going to use this option here. So I'll click on virtual machine. And this will take me to the virtual machine creation plate. So this is a familiar page for every services or every resource you want to create on Azure. You have the option to select the subscription, the resource group, and then after you can have the details for the particular resource you wish to create. So to do that, I will ensure that the subscription selected is the right one. And then I would select or type in a resource name. I'll create a new resource group. I'll name this one Jollof. RG. So this will be the name of that specific resource group. And then I'll give it a name. So I'll name it as Jollof Server. Now I'll just make it WebServer. So essentially, this is just going to be the name of whatever resource you're creating, whatever the name you want to give it to. And for the region, you just simply have to select the region you want to deploy your resource to. Regions are more like geographical locations around the world. So Microsoft do have a lot of data centers around the world. I'm going to push this resource to the UK South. In terms of the availability option, you have the option to use availability groups. So I will leave it as availability zone, and then I can select the zone I want to push my resource to. You might probably ask the question, what is availability zone? For each regions that you deploy your resource to, there might be multiple data centers, and each of them will be classified as a zone. So in that case, for UK South, there are 3 data centers in that specific region. That means you have one building that hosts your resources, and there'll be another building that will host a certain group of resources, and there might be some probably about 100 miles or 200 miles distance between them, and each specific data center in that specific region will have its own separate power source, separate networking. Right, so let's move on to the images. So in terms of the image that I want to use for this server, I'm going to use Ubuntu server. So I'm just going to keep it as it is, but you can select whichever image you want to use. So moving on to the size is all about how powerful you want your server to be. Keep it as 8 gigabytes memory and also 2 CPU, but you can also select whatever resource that related to whatever you're creating. So if you want it to be super powerful, then go ahead and select the ones that matches the resource type you are creating. In terms of the authentication, I'm going to utilize the SSH public key because that's more secure compared to utilizing a password. So in terms of the SSH public key, you will need to generate SSH key pair, which means you will have a private and also a public key. You upload the public key to this virtual machine here. So what I'll do is I'll select the option of I have my own existing public key, and then I will generate my own key as well. In terms of the user, probably I'll just make this one as AZ user, and then I'm just going to create the SSH public key and also the private key. So to do that, I'm just going to use the Cloud Shell. So I'll click on this icon. So once this fully loads up, I'll switch to the Bash option. So what I'll do is I'm just going to click on Bash and then confirm the switch. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm just going to type in the SSH key gen to generate the public and the private key. So it's asking me if I want to save it in this specific location .ssh. So I'm just going to say yes. So by pressing enter, and then I'll just type in yes, there's already existing one, so I'll override it and I'll just type in a passphrase. All right, so you say it doesn't match. Let me try again. All right, so match this time. So now the key have been created. So I'm just going to navigate to the directory where I have the key. So I'm just going to do a cd and then .ssh and ls. So these are the two keys I've just created. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the public key for now, and then I'll use it for my virtual machine creation. So to do that, I'm just going to cat the content of id rsa.public, and I'll just copy the content. And what I'll do is I'll just minimize this for now, and I'll paste the SSH public key here. So I just have to keep note of the username and the password. Just have to make sure I do remember the passphrase that I used for creation of the public key, and also the private key for that matter. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to follow through with the next option here. So we need to select the inbound port, or port 22 for SSH. I'll keep that one open, and then I'll move on to the next page. So in the next page here, in terms of the OS, the size, I'll leave it as the default of Premium SSD. This is all for production environment. It's best to use the Premium SSD. For testing and dev environment, you can use the SSD standard. And for backup and also non-critical services, you can then use the standard HDD. So I'll keep it as Premium for now, and I will move on to the network session. In the network session too, I'll keep it as normal. I'm not going to go deeper into the network session. I'm just going to switch to management monitor, and then I'll just skip through this one. I'm not going to add any tags, but tags are extremely good in terms of cost management, and also help you to identify who created which resources. So that is also a very good one to add when you're creating resources, but I'm not going to do it for this session. So now I'm going to the last option, which is review and create. So the validation have passed successfully, so that means our resource is good to go. We can create this one without any problems. So I'll click on create. So this should create our resource. Okay, so this will be a good time for you to grab some coffee, and also if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, this is a very good time for you to subscribe. Thank you. All right, so the resource has been created successfully. So let's navigate to the resources. So I'm just going to go to virtual machines at the very top. So I'm just going to type virtual machine, select the virtual machine, and this is the server we just created, and I can see that the current status is running, so we can really SSH into it now. So I'll click on it, and then once it loads up, I will take a note of the public key. And before we proceed, let's download the SSH private key onto our computer. So I'm just going to download this key here, the private one. So I'm just going to do ls again, and this is the one I'm going to download. So to do that, what I'll do is probably just simply have to type in download, and then type in the name of the file, and just click on download here, and it should download the key to our download folder. So now I can use the terminal on my local computer to SSH into the server we just created. So to do that, I'm just going to type in terminal, and just going to cd into the location where I have this file. So this will be in my download folder, ls, and that's the private key here. So what I'll do is, I'm just going to SSH into the server using the IP address that I copied from here. So I'm just going to close this one down. So I'll copy the public key for my server, go back into my terminal, and then I'll simply SSH into it. So I'll use the SSH -L for login. The username was azuser, and then the IP address, and then I'll use the I, and then specify my private key, which is ID. That's it. Then I'll just press enter, type in yes, and then type in the passphrase. All right, so I have successfully logged into my web server. So I'm just going to clear the screen just to have it up at the top. And then I'm now in the new web server, Jollof web server. So that's it. So what we're going to do from here is to install Nginx, which will be the web server component, which will allow us to serve our website. So to do this, I'm just going to simply run the update first on this web server. So I'm just going to type in sudo apt update. Okay, so update is done successfully. Now I'm just going to install the web server, the Nginx. So I'm just going to clear the screen once more. I'm going to type in sudo apt install Nginx, and then I'll say yes. So this should start the installation of the Nginx web server. All right, so the Nginx web server has been installed successfully. Just to see that this is working, what we can do is to access it. But at the moment, I do not have port 80 enabled on the server. So what I'll do is I'll go back to Azure. So once in Azure, we can go into the networking session and allow port 80 to be accessible from outside. So to do that, you go to the virtual machine object, select the virtual machine, and then under the settings, click on networking, and you should be presented with these options: the inbound port rules and outbound port rules. So we're going to create it for inbound port rule. So at the moment, we only have port 22 allowed. So we're going to add port 80 as well. So to do that, simply click on add inbound port rule, and then you can define which IP address you want to have access to these resources. But I'll leave it as any, because if you have created a website, you want everyone in the world to access it. I'll leave that one as any. And in terms of the destination, that's the port they can reach out to that service on. I'll use the service option here and then select HTTP. So I'll select HTTP. That'll be port 80, and then I'll give it a name. So I'll keep it as the default name of allow any HTTP inbound. That sounds good to me. And make sure the action is set to allow, and then I'll simply click on add. So now that should add the option for port 80 to be open as well. You might not probably see it now, but if you refresh the page, so if I do refresh the page, it should show up now. There you go. So port 80 is now part of the services that is open on this specific web server. So what I'm going to do now is that I can simply connect to it by picking up the public IP address again and then typing into a browser. And there you go. Welcome to Nginx. So that means we can access our web server. All right. So what we're going to do now is that we've created a web server. We can access the web server. We want to ensure that we have access to the website that we've created for our Jollof Rice online service, so that we can get customers to go onto that website and then order their food. So I already pushed the web server content to GitHub. So I'm just going to remote to GitHub and then get our content. But before we proceed with that one, I'm just going to navigate to the directory where I can save the content for my website. So back to the web server backend. So I'll cd into var www.html and then press enter, and then I'll press ls. So when you type in ls, this will show you what is currently in that folder. So that is this content that we've seen here. So there is an existing HTML. So let me clear the screen first and then type in ls again. So we do have this index.nginx-daemon.html, and that's what is serving as this content here. For us to add our own content, what we will do is, we can remove this one and then put in our own web content. So to do that, I'm just going to use an RM to remove this. right? Say permission design. So I'm just going to use sudo rm-f index. So now there's no more content here. So now I'm going to use GitHub to pull my content. All right, so what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to use the sudo to ensure that I have the root privilege to create a folder or a file in this specific path. But once I switch user, I probably will be pushed away from this specific directory. So I have to then cd back into this path again. So let's use the sudo first of all, and then let's go back to that specific directory again. HTML. Right, so I'm back in there. So now I'm just going to use the git command to clone my website from GitHub. So to do this, just going to use the git command. So git clone, and it's https://github.com/kofiade, and then /jollof2. And now it's cloning the website from GitHub. That's done successfully. So just ls, and now we have the jollof rice in there. So now hopefully this should work fine when we go to this specific directory on our website. So I'm just going to copy this path and then go back in here. So you go back to the website using the browser and then type in that path in there. And here we go. I got my website loaded fine, no problems whatsoever. So now I can see the nice, delicious website with my jollof rice. So anyone can place their order. I'm in business. People can place orders online. You see how simple it is to create a website using Azure. And people can easily have their nice, delicious jollof rice served to them. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if this video helped you out in terms of creating your own web server, do well to subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit the like button, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.